thrilled to have you here. We are joined in Colorado by three of my outstanding colleagues. Avery Ford is the Attorney General from the great state of Nevada.
Hi, everybody.
Nick Brown, great state of Washington, and Ann Lopez, all the way from Hawaii. We are here because this is a team sport. The work we've been doing together is crucial, and hearing from people on the ground matters greatly to us. The event today is going to have a number of on-the-ground experiences of those who are both facing illegal, harmful conduct, those who have faced it, and those who are afraid they're going to face it. We need to hear from people. People need to know that we are on the case, both literally and figuratively, to address the attacks on the rule of law and the foundations of our democratic republic. We wanted to make ourselves available to you because we suspect you may have a few questions for us. Lawrence, I can set up about, I don't know, see how much time, up to 30 minutes or so, let's see.
Any questions?
And answer your questions, so bring them on.
Great. Well, hi, my name is Evan McMorris, and I'm with Notice. Thanks. Nice to see you all. It's been a pretty wild week and day when it comes to legal fights and this administration. We see maybe the first steps towards a contempt declaration against some administration officials. There's just so much going on. I've asked this question a couple times, but I wanted to know, do you really think that the legal system can sort of handle all of this pressure at one time? This flood the zone thing that's happening, can this system actually support it all?
I have no doubt that the answer is yes. It has, and it's done it for the last 89 days, 90 days. And more importantly, there's 23 of us all over the country who will make sure that it holds up and stands up. Our staff and our collaboration, I have no doubt.
And just to remind you that of all of the lawsuits that have been filed by the Democratic Attorneys General, there are dozens of different federal judges that have opined on these issues, appointed by members of both parties, and they've essentially come to the same conclusions, that we are going to defend and uphold the rule of law. So I, like my colleague from Hawaii, have no doubt that we're going to continue to be able to withstand this onslaught, which, by the way, is by design. There is a psychological and business-oriented philosophy around this mass attempt to overwhelm people that we won't fall prey to. We have been able to work together over the course of the last few years. We will continue doing that going forward, and we will continue to uphold the rule of law.
It has to hold, because if we lose the rule of law, we lose everything. And that's something we're all fighting hard for. The issue should not be a partisan issue. It is a sad thing for America right now that the rule of law is often being upheld and protected only in certain states, because other states are silent when it comes to basic constitutional rights like separation of powers or the First Amendment or due process of law.
Hi, my name is T with Law 360. Can you give us a sense of what it looks like on the ground in your offices right now? Obviously, you were already doing stuff before President Trump took office and you decided to bring these legal challenges. And now you've got an even fuller plate. Tell us a bit about how your staffs are handling these new challenges, how you're working together, and just the workload.
Well, I think first and foremost, like Phil and others have said thus far, this moment requires a great deal of collaboration amongst our offices. And our staffs are meeting regularly. We, as Democratic AGs, are talking regularly so we can share resources and work and strategies as we approach these really immense challenges. We also have to recognize that every state is differently situated in terms of the number of lawyers and professional staff that we have. And some states are incredibly well-resourced, others are newer or growing, and so we will require more collaboration. We also have many people in our offices, and I'll highlight Washington to start, who were in this fight with the Trump administration the first time around. So many people that I have on my team now that are leading these challenges were there in 2017 when we first challenged the travel ban that was banning Muslims from coming to America. And so they are seasoned. There's some battle wounds that have been earned over many, many years. But it's going to put different strains on each of us, which requires so much collaboration as we move forward.
Yeah, look, make no mistake about it, my folks are exhausted, but they're exhilarated. We sleep well at night because we're exhausted, but because we also know that we are defending the rule of law. We wake up every single day knowing that we are on the job, and we will continue to do the job working with not only our colleagues internally with our office, but also with colleagues like these standing here. I'm so proud to stand with a Phil Weiser. He and I were elected together in 2018. We call ourselves Pledge Brothers. Re-elected in 2022. Have worked together so frequently on so many important issues. There's a lot of intellect, but also a lot of fervor associated with what we do. And the four of us are just an example of what's happening across the 23 or so Democratic Attorney General that we have, and we will continue to fight.
And I guess so, just to follow up to that, part of the reason I ask is because I imagine there's going to be areas where state enforcers are really going to have to step up. I mean, I'm thinking of the lawsuit that states filed to challenge funding issues with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, for example. So I'm just curious, from your perspective, are there areas where state enforcers need to be more active in the next couple of years, and what are those?
Well, top of mind for me is civil rights issues. I'm a veteran of the Department of Justice. I was the U.S. Attorney in my state, a long-time line prosecutor. And the Department of Justice, it exists. Its whole purpose in being founded was to enforce civil rights issues in America. And we've seen a total retraction from that in this administration, a very explicit retraction from that, which means more and more states across this country are going to have to fill that void and step into that void to support people who are the most vulnerable and at risk. And it's really saddening and frankly offensive to me to see the Department of Justice retreat from their core mission of doing civil rights work. But we're going to have those same types of harms, those same types of discrimination, those same types of hate crimes that are happening all across America. And it's going to be incumbent upon us to try to fill some of that space.
What has the actual experience of litigation been like against this administration in terms of like them complying with court orders or just the general day-to-day business of some of us?
So the day-to-day has been victory after victory after victory. We've not necessarily won every single case that we've been involved with, but we've won almost every single case we've been involved with. And that's because this administration doesn't seem to care about following the law. You raise a question, will they care when a court rules against them? And I would say the results this far are a combination of deeply concerning to mildly encouraging. The mildly encouraging side is, in the cases that we've had, there have been multiple times where the Justice Department said, we're implementing the court's order, we're respecting the order, and if we disagree, we'll appeal. We did have a moment where Chief Justice John Roberts called out the president for threatening to impeach a judge and not follow a ruling. And now we are hearing about a matter where we are seeing a threat to not follow a court ruling, and that may well come to a head, and that's going to be a critical test for our republic.
Mr. Attorney General, thank you all for being here today. Listening to the questions and your responses to this, you mentioned just now in victory after victory in the court cases. But as we see, that means nothing to the President or the administration continues to break the law. So at what point do we see that perhaps we're in a constitutional crisis? He's not following the law. When does this get to a point that, okay, we've got to enforce these actions?
A very challenging moment where the concern of a constitutional crisis is knocking at the door. And the Supreme Court is going to have the chance to hear this case that they've already addressed once. And they will have the opportunity to make clear it is unconstitutional and un-American to take someone off American soil for no reason at all, who's here lawfully, and deport them to another country. And if the administration's position is we can do that, there's nothing that can be done about it, they are going to lose in court, and they're going to lose in the court of public opinion. And what you saw with this most recent round of tariffs that were walked back is the court of public opinion matters. And so part of what we work to do is win our cases, not just in court, but in the court of public opinion, knowing that we need we the people to be heard, and we the people are clear a president does not have the right to violate the law, is not above the law, and can't ignore court orders that would undermine critical constitutional values.
If I may add one more question. We heard also that these rallies, that the people now are going to be seen as attack on this administration, and they might also be targeted. Again, I appreciate the work. In that situation, what are we to do if that happens?
Can I ask you a question? You
Please.
said that you represent a bilingual community
That's
that's
correct.
Spanish and English?
Yeah.
Let's be clear, we're not standing here as if we're oblivious to the fact that we are on the precipice of a constitutional crisis. I don't believe we're quite there yet. I do believe, I retain belief in our system of government, in our institutions, including our courts. To be sure, the Supreme Court disappoints me on occasion with decisions that they come down. Reasonable minds may disagree. That's how you get 5-4 decisions, for example. That does not mean, however, that our system is broken and that it won't work and that it won't hold accountable those who violate the laws. We've heard already about the judge in D.C. Who is contemplating a criminal contempt against the administration for violating orders related to the deportation of Venezuelans, I believe it is. We will have to see how that plays out. I retain, as I've indicated, however, some level of belief that our system of government will prevail. Phil's point about the public opinion being important can't be understated. It is a matter of fact. Peaceful protest, and I want to highlight that, peaceful protest is something that sways political opinion. And people have to engage in this conversation and to let the president know that we will not abide by a continued affront to the constitutional principles under which we're all supposed to live, especially those of us who took oaths of office to uphold the Constitution. To the second part of the question, and I'm going to turn to the mic. It's also not lost on us that some of those who are the most vulnerable right now in society are those who are being attacked. I don't ask them to, for example, stand beside me as I assert the fact that undocumented immigrants have constitutional rights. I don't ask an undocumented individual sitting next to me to put a target on his or her back. I'm going to speak as an ally on that person's behalf. Because I didn't make that rule up. That's a constitutional rule that is interpreted by the U.S. Constitution, by the U.S. Supreme Court. That said every person present here has constitutional rights. So I, as Attorney General from Nevada, Phil as Colorado, Nick as Washington, and Ann as Hawaii will stand up to represent the entirety of our respective states' families and our constitutional rights, irrespective of what may come relative to us, without fear or favor. And that's part of what our job is. That's part of what we endeavor to do and will continue to do, even in the face of these challenges coming from a federal administration that seems to be hell-bent on violating constitutional principles.
Let me add one point to that, which is important. This is a moment that on the other side will be deep learning and deep commitment to our constitutional values. If you ask before this administration, how important is due process of law to you, people's eyes would glaze over. But now you ask people, can you be picked up anywhere and you're here lawfully and get shipped to a gulag in El Salvador, never be heard from again? Everyone would say, that's not America. It just happened in America. The question is, are we going to do something about it? We as a nation, I believe, will respond to this moment and will learn from this moment.
Attorney General, thank you, and I'll close with this. My position with Seminati Media, I'm in the executive level, and I have seen our journalists in the newsroom there with Halsey. So I'm asking just the questions that people are afraid to ask, and that's why I'm here tonight in this opportunity. So I want to say thank you all for what you're doing. We truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Let me just say one thing, and it touches on your question, but also what a couple others have asked as well. I think for the most part, thus far, our system is working the way it should be. The president and the administration are doing things, many of which are plainly illegal or unconstitutional. Our respective offices are bringing cases, our lawyers are going to court, the Department of Justice is showing up to argue those cases, judges are issuing rulings and the like. When they have failed to live up to what the judge has ruled, we have gone back to court or filed new motions for contempt or to enforce the judge's ruling. And for the most part, that has corrected any lapses in enforcement that has happened. But we are on the tiptoe of what I would think about as a crisis point, particularly around the immigration-related cases. We're seeing a blatant disregard for what the court has ordered. I watched with really a high level of disgust yesterday, or maybe it was the day before, in the Oval Office when they were rewriting history around what the Supreme Court had said and issuing that 9-0 decision. And so in that particular area, I think we're going to be at a real crisis point where our Supreme Court, with the authority of the U.S. Marshal Service, I might add, is going to have to decide whether or not they're going to enforce their rulings. But in the vast majority of the cases that we have brought across our offices, it's been going the way that it should go. It's not gone perfectly, but the system and the process and the Department of Justice and the lawyers on both sides of the aisle have been doing what they are supposed to do. But it's getting weaker and weaker as we get to some of these real principal questions around executive authority and the like.
Yes.
I have a question. I should introduce myself. I'm Sophie Quinton, I'm a reporter for Pluralist News, and I cover state budgets, so I'm particularly interested in all the litigation around the Trump administration freezing or cancelling certain monies that were promised to states. And I'm wondering, it seems like particularly in sort of the big multi-state lawsuit over frozen grants, it's been, there have been kind of repeated court orders, and yet we still see the Trump administration withholding certain funds. I mean, could you help me understand if that is a function of the administration? Is it kind of a case of playing whack-a-mole, or they'll release some monies in response to a court order, and then suddenly some other pot of money is frozen, or are they consistently refusing to release money? I guess it's sort of, we see all of the news announcements about these, new motions in the case, but it's hard for me to track, has the money actually been released? The states been trying to make sure that they get it.
You're going to hear from someone tonight who's going to talk about the money that was released because of one of these cases.
Okay.
Your point is fair. There may be some individual grants that are being withheld illegally and we're forced to play at whack-a-mole. But by and large, the administration has said, we're following these court orders, we are making our best efforts to get the funding streams open, and we've been looking like a hawk to see where they're not and where we need to go to court.
I was going to echo that. Certainly in Hawaii, we've had a bit of a whack-a-mole experience where we'll do a declaration saying that these funds have been withheld and be very specific, and the day before the hearing, funds are released. So clearly there's game playing going on, but in my mind, the funds were released.
Yeah.
And that is the key from my perspective in terms of continuing our environmental and our healthcare programs, continuing to employ and pay the people who do that work in our states.
And look, chalk it up to naivete at some level, what I'm about to say. Look, organizations are made of people. People are fallible. They can make mistakes. I wouldn't doubt that there are some mistakes being made on the federal government level, right? It's a humongous organization that is compelled to release monies, and sometimes they mess up, right? It's not all intentional, I would argue, I would hope. But to the extent we discover that orders are being violated, we will go back to court and enforce those orders and have those monies released. And that's been our experience.
Any other questions?
I want to follow up on the public the public opinion part, the dual roles that you have. You mentioned the idea of the administration saying their version of that Supreme Court ruling the other day. This is part of what your job is too, right? Is to try to come out here and explain what's actually happening in these complicated court cases. Do you feel like Democrats are winning that battle of the public opinion conversation around these court cases? I mean, are your opponents fairly shrewd with the way they're dealing with this? I mean, how do you sort of view that aspect of your job?
Can I just say, I don't think Democrats are winning. I think the people in America are winning every time we win one of these cases. That is not a partisan argument, because the same people who get public school funding and free lunches cut in Hawaii are getting the same lunches cut in Tennessee and everywhere else. And so I think the more we just focus on Democrats and Republicans, we're losing the message, which is the actions and the policies are violating the Constitution and legal rights and causing real everyday harm to every single American. And that's where I think our focus has to stay, is in that, the people we serve.
Well, it's an interesting nuance that you just mentioned, because I'll be a little vulnerable. I'm a little ambivalent about the approach we take sometimes. Birthright citizenship is a prime example. One of the first case that we all had to engage in, 18 in one, 4 in another. Both cases prevailed, and we have preliminary injunctions stopping nationwide implementation of an unlawful, unconstitutional order that says if you're born or undocumented folks, you're not citizens. That applies nationwide, but not every attorney general in the nation sued. I live in Nevada, but I'm from Dallas, Texas. My mama's from Dallas. She lives in Dallas. My grandma lives in Dallas. My wife's folks live in Dallas. They get the benefit of the work that we have done, even though the Texas Attorney General did not stand up for the rule of law in that particular instance. And so contemplating how best to put forth these arguments is interesting in this debate around, for example, a district court, a low-level court having the ability to issue nationwide injunctions. You have Republicans on the one hand, I get it, we don't want to necessarily differentiate between Republicans and Democrats when it comes to the benefit, but you have Republicans on the one hand who don't want a district court to issue a nationwide injunction. But that would mean that certain states, more than half of them, whose attorneys general are not standing up for the rule of law, their states won't get the benefit of the wins, the more than the dozen wins that we have thus far in standing up for the rule of law. And that's an important point to make as well. I know that's a tangent, quite a bit of a tangent, what you talked about, but that was a stream of consciousness that came to mind that I thought was worth mentioning out loud.
Let me add also, too, I think that this is a conversation we've always all had. Elections have consequences. So how come people aren't experiencing the consequences when the Democratic AGs are doing the work? Which I think we all feel conflicted about that. But when it comes to something like NIH, indirect costs, and the grants cuts, those are only the plaintiff states are benefiting from that. So Texas as a state is just shy of something around $1 billion in grants a year. They're not going to get that, but California, Hawaii, all of our universities are going to continue to get those grants and not have those cuts. So I want to be clear that I also feel a little satisfaction that we're winning that fight, and the red states who aren't joining us are going to feel the consequences of the election.
Attorney General Weiser, I just want to ask about some of the immigration enforcement that we've seen. Operation Aurora was obviously a campaign, and we saw some of the raids happen here. Could you talk a little about the experience of Attorney General, like having those kind of actions in the backyard, but then also these are federal actions?
I'm going to pick up what Aaron Ford just talked about. Everyone who's here lives under the rule of law and a constitution committed to due process, which means there's a right way to handle immigration matters. It's that people go through a legal process which can determine whether they can stay or not. The wrong way, people get rounded up, put on a plane, and shipped somewhere else without any process. And we are all committed to fight for that principle of due process of law for everyone. And I believe the American people are going to stand with us on that principle. Right now, it's going to be tested. It's being tested.
One of the cases here is probably the ACLU. Is there a role for the Attorneys General?
The ways we engage are either directly when we bring a case, or we file a friend of the court brief in a case brought for somebody else. And so in the case you're talking about testing illegal deportations without due process of law, that is an area that I am confident you would have an interest in and would want to be looking for fight to support due process of law. So there's going to be a range of these different cases. We're not going to be able to be in all of them. We're not going to necessarily be in all of them right away, but we need to make sure that the principles we believe in are fought for and that we're part of that fight for principle.
Among attorneys general, not just in the Democratic circle, but also in the bipartisan circle. Works across the aisle to get a lot of stuff done. When he speaks in our circles, people listen, and the intellect that he exudes, I think, is something that you should be proud of, because this is real. This is exactly right. This isn't about a philosophical difference of. This is about the law. What's the law say about people who are living in this country and the application of the Constitution to them? And what he just articulated is something that I think you should be proud of, and the way that he's operating here is something that you should also be proud of.
I have a quick question. I'm just following up on how your offices are handling this work. I'm wondering if any of your offices have had to hire new staff or ask legislatures for more money to hire new staff. If there's been an effort to kind of, as sessions have progressed, kind of bulk up AG's internal capacity.
Well, I'll take more money.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, in Hawaii, we have an amazing governor, an amazing legislature, and they recognize the fight ahead, and they gave me more money than I asked for my litigation fund. And that money is specifically for this Trump litigation. And as we talked about earlier, we all have different kinds of resources. We have different numbers of people, different amounts of money. We have different time zones, which help us plan things. So all of this goes to this collaborative effort of working together.
We're getting 3 new FTE Colorado according to the budget that's been recommended from our Joint Budget Committee. Assuming that passes and is signed by the governor, that will be giving us the request, which was a modest request given the level of workload we have. People in our office are working very hard, incredibly effectively, and the return on investment is extraordinary. Is it today or tomorrow that we're in Port of Rhode Island?
Today and tomorrow.
Today.
Tomorrow and Friday.
Friday.
Tomorrow and Friday.
Colorado's in court tomorrow in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
One of our partners are in court the next day in Rhode Island. We are leading a case that brings back $220 million to Colorado in funding that is threatened to be pulled away illegally involving public health investments. That's something that we've talked about with our legislature. Space Command here in Colorado is now threatened being taken away through what we believe will be an unprincipled and illegal process. We are ready to fight for Colorado and for that vital resource. We see our office as giving the people of Colorado a great return on investment. We are scrappy, we are lean, and we are working really hard to deliver significant results.
The thing I would keep in mind too for all of us is the Trump and the federal litigation gets a disproportionate amount of the attention for the work that we do. But at least for me, and I think for all of us, it's a fraction of what's happening in our offices. We have a broad array of authority and responsibility representing and defending state government and advocating for people on a whole wide array of issues. That was happening before Trump was president, it will happen afterwards. But we also need the resources to support that ongoing